Let's take you now to Pretoria, where many refugees who've been camping outside the office of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees in Brooklyn have been left stranded following a court order that they move. The Pretoria High Court has ordered that they relocate by this past Wednesday, while some were arrested and others went to the Lindela Repatriation Center. Some say they don't know where to go. Our reporter Katlego Sokoto is there. Katlego, good evening to you once again. You've been following the story and interacting with the people stationed outside there. How is the community reacting, the residents of Brooklyn, to the refugee stations there?
A very good evening indeed, Mpho. It is a really sad scene behind me here where people have been left destitute, really, Mpho, where they moved, as you mentioned, from the office, in front of the offices of the UN High Commissioner in Brooklyn, and now they've been moved here to an open site in Muckleneuk in Pretoria, where it's really an open question about what happens to them now. And yes, many of them, so there was a group of about 100 who started, and now that number could be sitting anywhere between 80 and 90. Some people were detained. I understand about 4 people were detained, and others were able to make some provision as to where to go. And this move to here has been led by the Lawyers for Human Rights organization, which really is facilitating or trying to figure out how to help the refugees here. And but I do have next to me, Mpho, Deborah from the organization to speak to me. Deborah, you've really been working with the refugees since 3 a.m. this morning, I understand. You've been on the ground. Now that they've come to this open area, what happens now, Deborah? What are the plans?
We're not quite sure what's going to happen at the moment. I think from the morning we were trying to reach out to shelters, to NGOs for people who can possibly take in some people. We have made arrangements, but it hasn't been able to, we haven't had an arrangement for the overall group. So now we're just waiting to see. We're still trying to get into contact with people to see if they can assist the refugees and asylum seeker. I think the main thing is that we wanted to get them out of the jurisdiction of Brooklyn, as the court order entails, in order to ensure that no arrest takes place and children aren't separated from their parents and so forth.
Now, Deborah, this community here, there's divisions of how they feel about people just being brought here, and I understand it's temporary. Just outline the conversations you're having. I know you spoke to the ward councillor. It did get quite intense. What's happening?
I think it's more of people, and I think it's just a lack of meaningful engagement. And there have been quite a deal of people who have come up to me and ask what's happening, and we would answer and we would try to, and we've even managed to get other people to assist us. And I think when people come with confrontational and they just want to vilify people for being homeless, that becomes a problem. And where we could sit down and come with a solution with a ward councillor, with somebody you would assume would be serving the community, when it's met with confrontations that don't ultimately solve the issue, it's difficult to find a way forward.
Deborah, would you at this point, are you hoping for government intervention, someone to help you to facilitate this? Are you on your own at the moment?
We are hoping for government intervention. I think we hoped for that from the moment there was an eviction application. I think the biggest problem here is that the court found that a detention facility is suitable alternative accommodation. So essentially what the refugees and asylum seekers need to decide is whether they want to be homeless or whether they want to stay in a detention facility. And that isn't a choice that Lawyers for Human Rights is making for them. What we're offering to them was asking them, if you have people nearby, if they have a place to go, where do you want to go? And this is the place that they identified that they would want to go. And all we were doing was arranging for them to be able to be at a place where they assume that they would be able to then get help.
Deborah, the Lindela Repatriation Center, are some of them refusing to go there, or is it full? What's that? What is the confusion there?
So Lindela is a detention facility, and most of them, if not all of them, have come from there. So they were dropped off by Home Affairs last year, around mid-last year. They were dropped off by Home Affairs, removed from Lindela and dropped off outside the UNHCR. So this is a to and fro between the UNHCR and the government essentially, and they're being moved up and down. So they want some form of stability. They want and they've stayed in Lindela, and those conditions were terrible for them to live in. It's made for detainees, but these are just people whose life was uprooted by the uprising with xenophobia, and so hoping for some form of stability.
Yeah. And I guess just the last one, Deborah, where to from now? I understand that some people have heeded the call that they might be helping with shelter, a church nearby. What happens now?
We're just waiting for confirmation, and we haven't received it as yet. But right now we're waiting to see if we can find accommodation from people who are willing to offer some shelter for the people, because this is not the ideal circumstances. Nobody wants to sleep in the open. I think when people want to criminalize homelessness, they have to understand that it's not a choice, and it's forced by circumstances.
Thank you very much for your time, Deborah. Thank you. Paul, there you heard from Deborah Radubu from the Lawyers for Human Rights, really outlining their intentions of trying to help the refugees here behind us. As we said, there are women, there are children here, young babies. I was told there was a 1-month-old baby here as well. Really just trying to figure out where they can be sheltered, and a push and pull between the organization as well as the community here, who are asking questions as to how long will they be here. And obviously Deborah outlining that, feeling an aggressive kind of stance from the community towards them who are trying to help the refugees here. And also just the overall conversation around the not criminalizing homelessness, and really trying to find a means of assisting people rather than vilifying them.
Yeah, very sad situation indeed, Let's leave it there for now.